They say love is blind, but I never knew blindness could hurt this much until the day I came home early. My name is Clara. I'm 42, a mother of two, and for 18 years, I thought I was married to the love of my life. We had everything: a cozy home, laughter that filled every room, and promises that I believed would last forever. My husband James was my world, my first love, my best friend. He used to call me his sunshine, but I didn't realize that the sun had started setting behind the clouds of his lies. For years, we lived what everyone called the perfect marriage. James worked as a corporate lawyer. He was charming, dependable, and always surrounded by people who admired him. Our children, Daniel and Sophia, adored their father. To the outside world, we were the picture of happiness. But behind closed doors, something had started to fade. It began with small things. He'd come home late, saying he had to finish important projects. He stopped asking about my day. He laughed less, smiled less. Then came the phone calls, always answered in another room, always short, always secretive. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. Maybe he was just stressed. Maybe work had changed him. Maybe love after so many years was supposed to feel this quiet. One evening, he came home smelling like a woman's perfume. When I asked about it, he chuckled and said it was probably his secretary's scent that rubbed off on him. I forced a laugh, but my heart felt heavy. That night, as he slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and wondered how love could feel so lonely. Days passed. The distance between us grew thicker than silence. My best friend Marianne noticed before I admitted it myself. She said, "Clara, you look tired. What's wrong?" I smiled and lied. "Nothing. James is just busy with work." But deep down, I knew. Women always know. One night, while doing laundry, I found a restaurant receipt in his jacket pocket. 2 dinners, 1 rose. The date matched the night he said he worked late. My hands trembled. I sat there for a long time, staring at that piece of paper, realizing it might be the proof of my broken heart. I didn't confront him right away. Instead, I started watching more carefully. I noticed he locked his phone with a new password. He wore new shirts, started using a new cologne, and spent extra time in front of the mirror. I knew I had to find the truth for myself. So, one morning, while pretending to update his calendar, I installed a location tracker app on his phone. I hated myself for doing it, but my heart needed answers. A few days later, while I was cooking dinner, I got a notification. James's phone was not at his office. It was at a hotel downtown. My chest tightened, but I stayed calm. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was a business meeting. Maybe I was wrong. 2 weeks later, a storm hit the city. The rain came down hard, and my office lost power. I decided to go home early and surprise James with lunch. As I drove through the rain, the GPS notification buzzed again. His location showed the same hotel. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear the thunder. When I arrived, I saw his car parked outside. The scent of his cologne mixed with the rain as I walked through the hallway. My hands shook as I held the spare key I'd taken from his car weeks earlier. The door opened quietly. The room was dimly lit, and I heard laughter. I took one step inside, and my whole world collapsed. James wasn't alone. On the bed, half covered by a blanket, was my younger sister, Elena. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred. My knees nearly gave out. Elena gasped, clutching the sheets to her chest. James jumped up, stammering my name. "Clara, this isn't what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like. The man I trusted most, the man I built my life around, was betraying me. Not with a stranger, but with my own blood. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply turned, closed the door, and walked away. The rain outside soaked my clothes. but I felt nothing. That night, I cooked dinner for my children, just like always. When James came home pretending everything was fine, I smiled and said softly, "Welcome home." Sometimes silence screams louder than any words ever could. For the next 2 weeks, I pretended not to know. I collected evidence, photos, messages, recordings. Every smile I gave him was fake. Every goodnight kiss a quiet goodbye. I was preparing for my moment, for my freedom. Our 18th wedding anniversary arrived. James booked a fancy restaurant and invited family and friends. He wanted to show off the perfect marriage he'd already destroyed. I wore the red dress he loved, smiled for pictures, and waited. When everyone finished their meal, James raised his glass to make a toast. Before he could speak, I stood up. "Before we cut the cake," I said calmly, "I'd like to share a few of our beautiful memories." I connected my phone to the screen. Photos began to play, but not family photos. They were pictures of James and Elena, kissing, embracing, holding hands. The room fell silent. Gasps filled the air. My sister dropped her glass. My husband turned pale. I looked at him and said, "Here's to 18 years of love and 18 days of betrayal." Then I walked out. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air felt lighter, cleaner. I breathed deeply for the first time in months. The next day, I filed for divorce. James cried and begged, but I had no tears left. Elena disappeared from the family. My parents were heartbroken, my children confused, but I stayed strong. I found a small apartment for me and the kids. It wasn't fancy, but it was peaceful. I started sewing again, something I hadn't done in years. Soon, my hobby became a business. I opened a tiny boutique, and with every stitch, I mended not just fabric, but my heart. Months passed, and I learned how beautiful life can be when you finally choose yourself. One evening, as I was closing the shop, I received a text message. It was from Elena. "I'm sorry, Clara. You deserved better." I smiled softly and whispered to myself, "I already got better." I got myself back. That night, I stood in front of the mirror, no makeup, no fear, no pain, just me. A woman who had walked through betrayal and found peace on the other side. They say heartbreak destroys you, but I think it just reveals who you truly are. I lost a husband, I lost a sister, but I found my strength. And if you've ever been betrayed, I hope you remember this. You don't need revenge to win. You just need to heal, rebuild, and shine again. Because sometimes, losing someone you love is the only way to find yourself again.